Okay, hey guys, welcome. So, I thought today for an interesting video, I would show you how we do a search at the IPO, at the UK IPO. How is a search actually performed? So, what I've done here is this is to show you kind of the internal processes that happen when you do a search. Okay, so this is the sort of thing that would be on an internal UK IPO search report. So I picked out here random case from ISPASnet, just any old case. This sort of thing I would have searched back when I was a patent examiner. And we're gonna have a look at it, okay? So I've just looked up something related to biometric security. Okay. So the first thing I would do is I would have what's called a technical statement or technical yeah, like a technical statement of some kind, and there would also be something called a search statement. And you would have under that, you might have search history. So those are kind of the main sort of things that would have in it. You would also have classification searches. So you'd also want classification searches. And under that, you would have search results. Okay. And I think that was it. I think that was all of it. So you'd have, or classification areas, classification areas. So these are the areas where you would actually search this, right? So where would it be most likely to be classified if this was filed at the EPO, right? Or just where would the EPO classify this? I should say, not if it was filed, but so the EPO classifies literally everything. Okay, everything that gets published gets classified by the EPO. So they apply. So the USPTO and the EPO apply what's called the CPC. The IPC, which is slightly different, is applied by the W uh, WP WIPO, the Worldwide Intellectual Property Office. So technical statement, right? So what would I say about that? So what I'm looking at is, so I'm just looking at this blind, okay? So I haven't seen this case before. I don't know what it's about. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the claims. So it says a verified secure biometric collection system for collecting and recording data from a user associated with a secure transaction comprising storage device, an input interface configured to receive information from the user related to the secure transaction, camera configured capture image of the user. So all of this is all known. All this, like, we don't need to worry about any of this. Biometric scanner configured to scan biometric information. Again, that's known. Camera encoder configured to combine and hash the image of the user into combined data sets that are stored in the storage device. So that sounds important to me, that sentence. A biometric encoder configured to process the biometric scan of the user biometric template datasets and store the biometric template datasets in the storage device. At least one of a human witness and non-human digital witness having access to sensor inputs and software configured to verify that the user providing at least one of the image capture and biometric scan is the user, wherein the at least one human witness and non-human digital witness is in proximity to user. Okay, so this sounds dodgy. So when I look at this, I'm thinking, is this excluded? Right, that's kind of thought that's going through my mind because this is what the EPO would call the broken chain of technical effect. However, for the purposes of this video, we're not going to worry about that. We're gonna pretend that this is something that the IPO would search. It probably is because it's on the borderline anyway, even if it is excluded, because we got security, which is generally regarded as technical, so it's something that would likely get searched anyway. Right, so we look at privacy encoder configured to combine and encrypt the combined data sets and biometric template data sets from storage device into encrypted data sets, memorializing the secure transaction, wherein the system is configured to produce a copy of the secure transaction that includes the encrypted data sets for the user, and wherein the storage device is configured to be purged of all the data collected from the user, including the information from the user and all the biometric data that includes the image of the user biometrics, combined data sets, da da da. So secure transactions, again, that sounds dodgy. Sounds like it might be excluded, but again, for the purpose of this video, we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to pretend So so after reading that, I'm thinking, okay, I've kind of got an idea what this is about, right? So it's basically a method of doing a secure transaction and then you delete all the information once that's done. So that's what we call obfuscation. Um, so that again might not rise to the level of technical effect. Right, so what's the actual, so let's look at what the problem is, right? So we've got three ways, whenever you search something, right, there's three ways that you would tackle a search. You've got the claims, so you search for the claims, because the claims define the scope of the invention. Step one, claims. Step two is problem. So what problem are they actually trying to overcome here? So this bit is telling me what the problem is that they're actually trying to overcome when we do this. Okay. So it says it's talking about modern society has increasingly become a digital-based society that increasingly utilizes computer networks to collect, transmit, and process personal data and information from individuals in the society. The personal data and information may be related to, for example, business, employment, private. So it's hiding personal information. So again, there's a high likelihood that this would be excluded. I want to actually see where this was actually classified. So patent family, that's what they call equivalent. So this was only filed in the US. So where was this classified? So we got Geo 6F2132, which is about biometric security. Geo 6F2162, I think that's protecting information. Same with 64, G16H, I don't know what that is. H04L. So these are all areas which would typically be regarded as technical stuff, you know what I mean? I think this is blockchain, but I could be wrong. Um, but you notice it says EPUS. That's because it's either the EPO or the US that have applied these classifications. This one here is what we call an indexing term. That's 220988. So we don't necessarily need to worry about that. HO4L, I forget what that is now. Um, but this tells me, okay, so this has already been classified, right? But when you're doing a search, you wouldn't actually know this in advance, right? So this would be something that's unpublished, meaning that these have not been applied yet. So if I was doing this blind, I would be thinking about where would I actually classify this, right? So to classify it is sort of similar to searching it because you have to look at what the invention actually is. So we're gonna just look at this, right? So it's talking about protecting information, right? Um, so they talk about artificially generated avatars that can mimic facial, voice, other biometrics. So they can talk about people can hack into your account using fake biometric data effectively is what that says. Um, and then it talks about commercial non. So talk about protecting transactions. So transactions are typically regarded as business methods, generally speaking, but this might escape the business method exclusion because it's talking about security. So again, we're just going to ignore that for now, right? Um, so so they've been saying talking about working remotely. So this is post-COVID, obviously. So let's see. So unfortunately, this increased digital and AI generated activity has also increased the activity of hackers who are actively attempting to obtain the secure and private data and information by using AI generated avatars, voice robots as imposters. These hackers may be motivated by personal, let's go blah blah blah. We don't particularly give a shit about what their motivations are. Um, so it's talking about protecting you from hackers. So we're probably okay in terms of which is also why it says that they need a witness because then we know that it's a real person that's inputting this, not a one of these avatars. So it's effectively inputting your biometric data with a witness present to make sure it's actually you, and the witness also having to input some biometrics to verify. So this verifies that it was actually you that put in your biometric information. If this was real, this would be wildly inconvenient, by the way, actually having to have someone physically present when you input your information. And then it deletes it all. Once you get access, it deletes all that information so it can't be used by hackers. That's basically how this works. Um, so and then it's also using blockchain. That's why it's 2164, because that's where they typically classify blockchain stuff. Um, So that's kind of what we're talking about, right? So that's the so we write down what is the technical problem. So I've only been looking at this for 10 minutes. So I'm just so like typically if I was doing this for real, I'd probably spend a good half an hour to an hour just kind of reading over this because so we've understood the problem. So the problem is that effectively hackers can fake your use AI to fake your biometric data, biometric information and pretend to be you using these fake avatars. So we're gonna write that down, right? So let's write that down on our technical statement, right? So we'd say this application aims to overcome problem with hackers and AI generated avatars. They which it says to uh act as imposters. Um, your obtain your and private information. So that's the first thing. That's the problem, right? So we've written down this is the problem. So if I'm searching this, so the second way is what's the problem? So that's essentially what the problem is in a nutshell. And then and then what's the actual invention? So we've read the claims. The claims are probably pretty close to what the actual invention is in this case. Sometimes they can be completely different, which is why you need three ways to do it. But in this instance, so we're not going to bother reading summary of invention because none of that's going to be relevant. What I'm looking for is I'm going to look through the figures now because I'm looking for the bits of the description that tell me how this actually works. Um, so we've probably got, if I look through this, it's probably likely to be figure 5 here is where we're actually looking at because figure 5 tells us how this is actually going to work. So we got patient information. So this is, I'm assuming, for a hospital. Um, so that's right, figure 5. Let's take a look. So flowchart diagram, for example, of an implementation of a collecting method performed by a BSBC system shown in figures 1 and 2 in accordance with the present disclosure. So this is VSBC. I don't know what that stands for, but we can look that up in a minute. So um so we'd say that work by having a witness. So let's um confirm that the user, sorry, to confirm that user was it's sort of like so it's a verification system, and then so it merges them. So um biometric data are merged together. And then I think it says it hashes them. Is that right? Is that what it says? It says this is center input software verifies it finally captures it's in process and the privacy encoder combine and encrypt the combined data sets into encrypted normalized and secure transaction copy of secure transaction, and we're in the storage information uh, uh, and then delete deletes all of the information, right? So basic claim one is looks like on the surface, at least again, I haven't this is just kind of to give you an overview, an idea, because I'm not gonna kind of obviously go through all this in full detail, but what I am gonna do is show you, right? So we write a search statement. So the search statement, what the search statement is, it's kind of tells people what I was looking for. So it doesn't necessarily mean I'm looking for claim one specifically. It's just I'm looking for what was I actually looking for? So claim one is obviously like you say, well, just claim one, right? That's what I was looking for. Well, not necessarily, because it really depends on what claim one says, what the invention is. So I might have been looking for the invention, which could be quite different to claim one. So it might be quite a lot narrower, or I could be looking for something a lot broader than claim one. So because yes, while I'm looking for what is in claim one, I'm looking for documents that show all the features of claim one. I'm not necessarily looking for claim one specifically. So for example, right, I am not going to bother searching for any of this stuff because why would I? Because all of this stuff is known. This is all known technology. It's all known. Um, it's all known hardware. So I'm not going to bother searching for that because what's the point? I'm just going to be wasting my time. What I want to look for instead is essentially something that does this. So the witness, I'm thinking about what are the key features here? The key features are the fact that you've got biometric input, you've got a witness, so you've got two pieces of biometric information from two people. They're merged together and then it's deleted, right? So that's what we're looking for, right? It basically in a nutshell, right? We've got so I'm gonna be looking for a system that and biometric data from a user and a witness. Oh, it doesn't have to. Okay, so the witness doesn't actually have to be a person. It says at least one of a human or digital, right? And a witness. So we'll just say witness. We don't necessarily. We can. When I'm searching, I'm also going to be searching for these two together: human, non-human, computer, AI, CPU, witness. So that's right. But anyway, we'll get to that, right? We're going to get to search terms. Okay. So system that scans biometric data from a user and a witness, where and combines and encrypts the data um to encrypts the data into encrypted data set to memorialize, we'll say, a secure transaction, and then purges all of the data and a copy of it. Right, so that would be kind of my search statement, right? So you can see it looks quite different to what is claim one, but I would be confident that if I found that, if I could find that, then whatever is in claim one would have been met, right? That's kind of the idea. If I find this, I've basically found claim one, right? Now I would also be looking through the rest of these claims because I'm also looking for other features that are going to give me, so we can say system or method, because there's also a method claim, so we can say system. But I'm looking for features in these claims, narrower features that I can search for and pinpoint. Because let's say I find claim 14, right? So it says system of claim one plus this. Certificate document generated from the transaction containing an encrypted user identity token. If I find that, then I find claim one, basically, right? Now, I've got classification areas, but what I'm also going to explain to you now, right, is so classification areas is important, but and I'll show you how I find relevant classification areas in a minute. If I didn't know if like say this, so if this was new to me, right, this is unpublished, it's just come into IPO. I'm now searching this, right? So we don't know where it's been we don't know where it's going to be classified because it's not published. Because the EPO can only classify published documents. Um, so let's pretend, right? So we'll do that in a second, but I want to know like search terms, right? So I'm just gonna show you this. So this would not be on an internal, well, it wouldn't, but this basically would generally, this is just something I'm gonna do here, but on an internal search report, this we would not get to see um the search, you would not see the search terms, you'd see the search history, which has all the search terms, but I'm gonna show you how I pick out search terms, right? Because I want to find this in the most efficient way possible. And the IPO use, well, they use something called Epoch, but I believe they've now changed to something called Search, which uses AI as well as the normal tools. But Epoch, back when I worked there, which is almost 4 years ago now, Epoch was the search tool. So it has all the documents that are stored in EPO servers, everything that's ever been published that's stored in EPO servers, which is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 140 million documents, right? So you're going to need to narrow that down, obviously. And you're going to want to narrow it down using search terms. What words am I using? So we got biometric in here, so that's obviously an important one, right? But if I'm say I decide, okay, I'm gonna search in 2132. Well, everything in 2132, 06F 2132 is related to biometric data. So I'm not gonna use that word in there because everything in there already says that. But if I'm searching just in general, so you can just search the whole database. You don't have to narrow it by classification, but this is just so, but we're gonna think about what terms do I want to use for the whole search, right? So biometrics probably gonna be one of those, okay? So biometric data. So and what we want to use are synonyms of that, right? So biometric would have things like eye, fingerprint, voice, right? These kind of words that things like biometric techniques, typical biometric techniques or ways of getting biometric data. These are sort of some of the typical ones. This isn't an exhaustive list. This is just to give you an example, but this would be some of them. Then we've got, what else we have? We have witness, right? So we've got human and non-human witness. And again, I'm going to think about synonyms for witness, synonyms for human, synonyms for non-human. For example, person, right? Could be friend, colleague, could be, right? And witness, right? So you don't have to think about these in your head. What I would usually do is I would go to somewhere like this, like Doris.com. This is what I would do in my job, and I would look up witness, right? And this gives you synonyms. There we go. Bystander, observer. So bystander, probably not. Eyewitness, no. Observer, yes. Spectator, yes. What else? Any of these words? No, no, no. Signatory, yes. Testifier, yes. Viewer, potentially. Corroborator, yeah, that sounds like a good word. So these are all words. So I'm not going to use all of these words. I'm thinking about what are the best words out of this that I could use. Right, then we've got, what else? What other good words do we have? Let's see. So we've got combining data, right? So we've got combined data, right? So that's another thing. That's another key feature. Combine data. Okay. I think there was hash. I believe I saw the word hash in there. So hash is also called known as a checksum. So we got that. And what else? Well, we had the problem. What was the problem? Hackers, AI. So we got avatars, right? AI. These sorts of things. So these are some of the words I'd be using. And there's ways to combine these words to search for them, like search them in proximity. We also can use things like if I was typing this into Epoch, for example, I might, instead of typing biometric, what I'd probably type, just an example, is this. So bio plus. So what that means is any word that starts with bio and then any set of letters afterwards. Although bio plus would probably be a bit broad, so I'd probably go biometric plus, because then you get things like biometrics, for example. You can also do things like so instead of typing this, right, you would type something like, so instead of that, what you type is this, non_human. Because what that does is that gives you non-space human, non-dash human, just in case someone that when they typed it into epoch. The other thing is when we search epoch, we're actually searching the abstracts. So we look up bibliographic data, right? So we got here, this is the abstract. So that's actually what you search, right? Now, question is, where am I searching for? Okay, so classifications. So we know this has already been classified, so we already know where this would be searched. But I'm also thinking about, right? So we're going to do classification search, right? So thinking about what is it, right? So we've got Geo6F, we got Geo6F, let's say 2132. We got 2132, which is biometric data, so that's obvious stuff. And what else did we have? We had okay, so that's encrypted data, so that's protecting data using encryption. So okay. 64 is checksum certificates, that's hash marks. Then we've got, so I think they also classified it in HO4L, right? So what I'd probably do is I would just do a rough search for this and then look at where it was classified if I didn't know, but we can look up what is HO4L. So what does HO4L tell us? So where was it? Let me just back up. I'm gonna put it in a different thingy because three. Um, Pull back up again. It's so yeah. Right, so we'll just do it in a different. Don't actually. So classing. Where else? Where did they classify this? This is cheating a little bit, but what we got? HO4L 906. So what is that? I think HO4L is thingy, isn't it? Telecoms, I believe, isn't it? If I'm not mistaken. That's also kind of regarded as one of the hardest areas to work on. Cryptographic communication. So I probably wouldn't bother searching this encryption apparatus using Swift registers. So I would probably focus my search on the Geo6F areas because it's all about just about secure biometrics. So I probably wouldn't bother with any of these other ones like this G16H, whatever that is. Let's take a look. Oops. Like G16H, what is that? Oh, healthcare information. Yeah, so I'm not going to bother with that. I would just, so if I was searching this, I'd probably just be searching Geo6F30, Geo6F. So I would type in Geo6F 21/32, and I type in /low, so that means everything that's underneath that. And Geo6F 21/62/low as well. Because that gives me, so what that gives me is, just to show you, right? When you type in /low, you get 21, where are we, 62. So that gives me this, that gives me basically all of this, everything here, right? All these classifications, you search all of them together, right? Because you've also got things like protecting personal data for financial medical purposes. That's secure transactions, right? So I'd actually probably even classify it there. I don't know if it was it classified there at 6245? Yes, it was. Okay. And then they said 64. I'm not sure I would put it in 60. Let me see where we go back to 64. Protecting data integrity, checksums. Yeah. So I'd probably, if I still hadn't found it after that, I'd probably then go 60/low as well, right? I would type it in like this. I would just type it in like that. So what that tells me is I search 2132 low, 62 low, and 60 low, right? And then once you've done your search, right? So you've looked in all these areas, you've combined all your stuff, and then you will produce a search history that shows what you actually did, and you would then highlight the documents that you viewed because you're not going to view them all. Because if I get, say, 1,000 documents, I'm not viewing that. I'm going to narrow it down to maybe 50 or so. And then I'll look at those 50 and then I'll keep going. And then if I find it, then I will put it here. I'll type what I found. And we classified documents. So let's take a look at what was, where was this? So what was found against this? Nothing. Okay, so nothing was found. So let's take a look at some other documents. I'll see if I can find something else to show you. So we'll type in biometric in there. So you can use this to search, but you can't use a lot of the techniques I've been describing because they don't work on this. But I'm just going to show you a search report. Let's take a look. Cited documents. Have something with a search report. Um, see. So usually they will be cited in 4 categories. I think so you got X, which means it's relevant for novelty or inventive step. Y, which means if you combine it with something else, then it will then it becomes an obvious. A just means background. It just means this is something in the same area, but it's not relevant. And I think that's it. X, Y, and A. Those are the 3 that we normally use, basically, from memory. So so that's kind of how we would do this. That's just to give you an overview of how the search works, okay? And you'll get a document. So internally, you'll have a document that looks a bit like this, right? That's kind of the IPO internal document would look something similar to this. And it will write a lot of information about it. And under the search report, it'll have a discussion of documents. So discussion of documents. No. And that will explain why the person has cited this. So when it comes time to examine it, the examiner, the person doing the examination will be able to read this and understand why these documents were cited. And they'll also be able to do a top-up search. So that means that they will look for things that are in what we call 2-3R. Right? But that's just to give you a basic overview of how the search is done and what people are actually looking for when they do a search. So hopefully that was helpful for you. And the next video I'm going to do is going to be discussing some excluded matter and also and then we're also going to look at how an 18.3 exam is done. What do we do when we do an 18.3 exam report? Okay, so until next time, see you guys later. Right, bye-bye.